everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cosmic Conversations. I am your hostess, Marla Martenson, and today I have a very special guest. Since the beginning of time, humans have hoped and prayed that an afterlife exists. Until now, this belief has been based on a leap of faith rather than a confirmed reality. Dr. Jaime Turndorf's story is proof positive that there is life after life and that love never dies. In her book, which I absolutely love, I read it twice, Love Never Dies. She is an internationally famous therapist, best-selling author, media personality, aka Dr. Love, and she shares the amazing true story of the spiritual reconnection with her beloved deceased husband, internationally renowned former Jesuit priest, Jean Pan, discovering for herself that relationships do not end in death. And the pièce de résistance, my favorite radio show on Hay House, is Love Never Dies, and it is the most listened to hour on Hay House Radio. Welcome, Dr. Love, Jaime.
Hi, it's so nice to be with you, Marla.
Thank you. So, this book was just fantastic because I'm one of those deep divers delving into the other side and spirituality. And in my latest book, The Buddha Made Me Do It, I talk about astral travel and connecting with my father and angels and all of this stuff. And it's just so exciting to read a book like yours, which we're going to delve into your story, how to connect, and also those people who maybe are resistant because of their pre-programmed spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs and all that. So just tell us a little bit about how this happened.
All right. Well, I have to give everybody who's watching a little background so you understand how wild a ride it really is.
Yes.
And my story starts when I was a young girl. I had a premonition of the man that I was going to marry. I saw his face, I saw his body, I saw everything about him. And so I just said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to date, I'm going to wait, which is a very medieval concept. And so he actually did appear on the first day of my freshman year at Vassar College. I had been shut out of all intro sociology classes, and I wanted to take sociology. So I asked the secretary of the department, what can I do? She says, go ask the department chair, a guy named Jean Pan, if he can find a seat for you in one of the closed classes. Well, the minute I stepped into his office, Marla, I had the first and only out-of-body experience of my life. I literally felt my soul shooting at high speed through a tunnel to the end of my life. And when I shot back into my body, I received the message, remember every aspect of this meeting, he's going to be everything to you one day. And then I forgot about it and went about my life as a college student. And soon after, I found out that for most of his life, Jean had been one of the most famous Jesuit priests in history. He had taught at the Vatican, and he founded a movement called Liberation Theology, designed to fight church oppression from within. Mm-hmm. And he actually launched to international fame when he publicly opposed the Pope and the Catholic Church as they were trying to block the legalization of divorce. He was a radical feminist Jesuit priest, and he didn't want to see women trapped in marriages where they were being abused. So he fought on the grounds of religious freedom. The church should butt out of the private sector. Well, he won. He got the divorce bill passed, changed the course of Italian history, and soon after, the Pope granted him the dispensation of his vows so that he wasn't excommunicated, and he was recruited by Vassar College to serve as the chair of the Department of Sociology. Now, everybody has to know, because this figures in a big way in our story, I had a completely different background from Jean. I was raised by two devoutly atheist Jewish parents. The only religion my parents practiced was religiously hating each other's guts and mine. So they taught me not to believe in God or the afterlife. I never read the Bible, never went to synagogue, none of this. Now, in the senior year at Vassar College, 4 years after our fated meeting, I needed help with the statistical portion of my thesis. And I had heard that, among other things, Jean had been a famous statistician, having founded the Vatican's first and only social research center. So I went to his office like a damsel in distress, and I said, I know you're not my advisor, but could you help me with my statistics? And he cheerfully gave me his time, and within a couple of weeks, we just knew. We were crazy for each other. We were twins separated at birth. We were
even though that big age difference.
It didn't matter. We
Yeah.
were just absolutely perfect for each other. When you look at our photos, on my website at AskDrLove.com, you'll see them on the book page, the Love Never Dies book page. You can just see our energy is just so perfect together. So anyway, from this point on, we are inseparable for 27 years. We write books together, restore houses together. We just rejoice in every moment that we spent together. Now, in the last year, Marla, of his bodily existence, we both separately started having premonitions that he was going to die of an accident. We just didn't know when or where it was going to happen. On the day we left for our final vacation in Italy, lightning struck the rose arbor in our backyard and destroyed it. And then I saw 40 huge, big black crows. And I thought, this is not good, not good. We went anyway. And one day, while we were sitting on the beach, Jean had his left hand up over his head as if to block the rays of the sun. The next thing I knew, a bee swooped down and stung his left hand at the exact location of Christ's stigmata. And then, Marla, I watched my beloved suffocate to death in front of my eyes. And in part one of Love Never Dies, I try to describe my absolute agony at having him ripped from me in this way. And I go back to the hotel room, I collapse on the bed, I'm shaking, I'm trembling, I'm hysterically crying, and the next thing I know, I feel that man's hand stroke the entire length of my spine. And I pop upright, I look over my shoulder, I don't see anything, but I knew he was with me. And he's been with me ever since. And his astonishing manifestations to this day, often in front of witnesses, prove to me we don't die. And therefore, our relationships are not meant to end in death. And so I created my transdimensional grief therapy method, which totally diverges from the Western approach, which is grieve, let go, and move on and do it in 6 months, or else we're going to give you a psychiatric label, we're going to put pills down your throat. That just leaves the bereaved at a greater loss. Instead, my method shows you how to say hello, not goodbye, and how to do it without a medium, a channeler, or a psychic. And then there's just one more piece. As a shrink, I know millions of people worldwide harbor unfinished business with somebody in spirit. And again, Western grief therapy offers us no way of working out our unfinished business. So Love Never Dies offers you the first vehicle in history for not only reconnecting, but also making peace with the deceased.
Yeah, that is awesome. And there's a piece here I'm so curious about. So you had said you had didn't really have spirituality or religion or anything growing up, but then you had these premonitions, and you had gone out down this tunnel, and then you'd had a premonition that Jean was going to have an accident. Were you thinking, what's going on, or were you always a little psychic?
I was always out there. I never knew what it was. I could always lay hands on people. I could do distance healings. I could heal animals. I could speak to domestic and wild animals, and they would understand me. But I never understood that this was spiritual. The last year of our life together, Jean said to me, Jamie, you're the most spiritual human being I've ever known. And I looked at him, what are you talking about? I didn't even know what he meant. But after he left his body, I came to understand we're talking about energy. And so whether you're sending energy with a healing intention, or laying hands with a healing intention, or you are energetically communicating with a human or animal, this is all energy transmission. And I realized this was all my training ground for the energetic communication that would eventually develop between me and Jean.
Yeah, you had a real connection, because I'm a Reiki master and a crystal healer. I have a lot of attunements, and that's what has been opening me up. But until then I didn't have that. I was kind of closed off.
Yeah, right.
So you must have just been being born premature.
Being born 3 months early, having had 106-degree fevers every month of my life, certainly opened me up in ways that were unusual. But that's the whole point. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because we can talk more about that.
Right.
Because I don't want people to think that you have to be born early or have high fevers in order to be able to connect.
Yeah, because you're going to tell us how to connect, and your book tells us how to
do it.
Now, one other thing I want to say that was so fascinating, when you tell the story about you and Jean sitting on a bench, and you say, I'm going to turn that street light off and on, and you turned the street light off and on.
I know.
with your energy.
And then, now that's a game that we play. If you go to my YouTube channel, which is Ask Dr. Love, you'll see there's a video there. Dead husband communicates with wife, proof caught on video. Because a few months ago, we did it together. I said, okay, put it on, Jean. Okay, put it off.
Oh.
So we're now playing the game together, and you can see it on film.
Oh, I'll link that up to this video. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and tell us some of the ways that other people had given some, some of the early communications.
All right, so basically, Love Never Dies takes you on the journey with me from the night that he leaves his body, and you come with me on the journey as I discover he's right here, as are your loved ones. So I'll give you a few examples.
Okay.
And then, of course, you know how they used to say in the Time Life book series commercial, read the book. Then you'll get, all the examples. But here's just a couple. So when I came back from Italy the first night, I was lying there in bed alone, and I'm hearing Jean quoting something to me. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Make a bookmark for that. So the next morning I come down, and I hear Jean saying to me, Jamie, open the kitchen door. I want to show you something. I open the door, and sitting on the stoop is a tiny little chipmunk. And I could tell this chipmunk was in a trance, because normally a chipmunk would scurry off and be afraid, but this chipmunk wasn't moving, and his eyes were almost all closed. And then I begin to watch him mimic Jean's bodily departure. He starts gasping and choking and ripping at his little face the way Jean was ripping at the oxygen mask because the air wasn't getting in. And of course, tears are pouring down my face as I watch this little creature recreating Jean's bodily departure. And after about 20 minutes of this torment, I see that chipmunk visibly cough up a wonk of mucus, and he's in peace. And I knew Jean was communicating with me through this little animal. I've since dubbed animals, both domestic and wild, as open vessels, because they are natural channels through which spirit tries to communicate with us. So the next thing that happened, which was really wild, was I had to fax Jean's death certificate to Verizon to take his name off the account. That day I had sent many multi-page faxes, no problem, no hitch. But when I went to fax this death certificate to Verizon, the cover letter goes through without a hitch, but the machine hangs up and will not send the death certificate. I try again with the obit. Again, cover letter faxes without a hitch. The obit won't go. I try 20 times. I finally just give up. The next day, I take the papers to my lawyer's office. I don't say why. I say, could you just fax this for me to Verizon? I'm waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, all the secretaries come from the back room, and they're weeping. They said, Jamie, we tried 20 times. Every time the cover letter faxes without a hitch, but the death certificate and the obit will not fax. He's trying to tell you he's not gone.
Right.
So I go home, and again I have to fax the death certificate somewhere else, and again he hangs it up. So I say to him, listen, Jean, I think you're doing this because I keep forgetting you're still here. If I promise to try to remember, will you let this freaking fax go through in its entirety? I cancel the fax, and I feel this tidal wave of love pour over me, and I knew it was Jean's way of saying, I heard you, Jamie. Okay. I reissue the fax. It goes through. So around this time, I'm starting to realize it's pretty weird. Strangers are walking up to me and saying, your husband says, tell our story. And then they walk on.
Yeah, that is unreal. I mean, what must they think, of them?
And that they're being used as human open vessels.
Yeah.
So now, another day, I was driving. I'll never forget, I was on Route 82 South to get my car repaired. And I suddenly feel that tidal wave of love again. And I had been praying for the first time in my life to Jean. And I never prayed. Remember, I was raised by atheists, no prayer, no church. And I said to Jean, please help my friend Emily find love. That was my prayer. I feel the tidal wave of love. I know it's Jean's acknowledgement of my prayer. I look at the clock. It says 4:58. That night, I get a phone call from Emily. She says, Jamie, I have to tell you what happened to me today at 4:58. That's what happened. She said, I fell into a trance and your husband appeared to me. Mind you, she's never seen him. He's never seen her. She describes him perfectly. It's Jean. And it was at the same moment, 4:58, that I felt the tidal wave that he put her in the trance. And he says to her, to find love, follow the gray stones to the church in your neighborhood. So he was reiterating the words of my prayer.
Yeah.
Now, a week later, she comes to my professional group in the city, and she tells this story. Another member of the group named Mitch Wood, a former seminarian, says, "What's the name of the church in your neighborhood?" She says, "Oh, the Claremont Church." He says, "Oh my God. The Claremont Church is New York City's only liberation theology seminary." Remember, Jean founded liberation theology. So he put his stamp on that manifestation in more ways than one. Now, I'm just going to give one more. And this is a series of manifestations that involve earthly props, which are what I refer to as generally electronic devices, because spirits, being pure energy, can influence the frequency of electronic devices. So it was one day early in my bereavement, and I was on the floor crying in my closet. I explained the whole story and why I won't go into it now. And I'm thinking, I have to call my friend Anne. I need to talk to her. No, don't bother her. She's working. And I just keep thinking it for like 25 minutes. Finally, in the distance, I hear the phone ring. I drag myself up. I go get the phone. It's Anne. She says, "Did you call?" I said, "No, Anne. I was thinking I needed to talk to you." She said, "Jamie, my phone rang and your name and number appeared on the caller ID." So Jean called her for us. Okay, so a year later, I have a chest cough. I cannot breathe. And I say to him, "Jean, I'm so scared. I think I'm going to suffocate to death the way you did. Please, please do that caller ID phone trick to let me know you're here with me now. Do it with my housekeeper, Donna. Do it now." 2 seconds later, the phone rings. It's Donna. She says, "Jamie, did you call?" I said, "No." And I tell her the story. She said, "My phone rang and your name and number appeared on the caller ID." Yeah. Okay, so around this time I go to my writers group, and Gabe, who's the head of the group, is a devout atheist, and he's hearing all the stories of Jean's manifestations and caller ID phone tricks, and he says to me, "Jamie, I would like to see evidence of whether your phone shows a record of having dialed out, whether your call log shows that the phone was used to dial even though you didn't use the phone." I forget the challenge. And a couple of weeks later, I'm meeting Gabe and his wife, Robin, for dinner. And I'm driving behind them when all of a sudden, I feel that tidal wave of love again. And I look at the clock on the dash and it says 5:45. I get to the restaurant where I'm meeting them, and Gabe stampedes me like a herd of elephants. He rushes up to me. He says, "Jamie, you won't believe what happened." I said, "What happened, Gabe?" He said, "At 5:45, my cell phone rang." He said, "I looked at the caller ID. Your name and number appeared." He said, "I picked up the call, and a man's voice said, 'Is Jamie there? Is Jamie there?'" He said the voice had an accent and prolonged the word "there." Well, Jean was French, and he did prolong the word. It sounded like "there." He said it wasn't a real call. It just faded away. The call never clicked off. Get your phone and see if it dialed me. I dig into my purse. I hadn't used it all day. Sure enough, Jean answered his challenge at 5:45. Yeah. My cell phone showed a record of having dialed Gabe. So what is the point of these over-the-top manifestations and all the other ones you're going to read in part 1 of Love Never Dies? Yeah. It's very simple. Right after Jean left his body, he said to me, "Jamie, let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others." So his manifestations aren't just for me. They are for everybody watching, to let you know that your loved ones are here with you too. They're just waiting for you to open the door of your heart and let them back in.
Right. That's so beautiful. And the fact that Jean was so spiritual and that you had this opening, so it happened kind of spontaneously for you. And luckily you teach everyone in the book how we can do it ourselves, because people Absolutely. See this and say, "But why doesn't mine come through?"
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the perfect segue into part 2 of Love Never Dies, where I now hand the wheel over to you and I say, "Okay, look, you now know it's real. Your loved ones are here, just like Jean is here. Now I'm going to show you how to do it." So the first thing we've got to do, in part 2, we talk about how to eliminate all the false beliefs and all the false religious teachings that block people from reconnecting. And then I also talk about the latest science to explain how this happens. Right. So do you want me to give a few of the false beliefs? So that we can
yes, please, because people think, I mean, even like my husband, the way he grew up, Catholic, even though he's not real religious now, I think he would think, no, you can't communicate, and once you're gone, and there's no angels, and this and that. It's just the way he was taught, and even though he's not religious now, so I think a lot of people.
Jean's Catholic, and he's coming to tell you. Okay, so remember I said I was going to come back to a story. The first obstacle is the wrong belief, like your husband and other Catholics and Christians say, we're not supposed to stay in connection with our loved ones in spirit. We're not supposed to. So remember I said the first night Jean was speaking to me and he was quoting something and I didn't recognize it. Well, the next day I go to meet his priest to prepare the readings for his funeral. And I say to the priest, listen, Jean's been talking to me and he's quoting something. I have no idea what it is. So the priest raises his brow in obvious skepticism like, this babe has lost her marbles. But then when I tell him that what Jean said, the priest goes white. He crosses himself. He says, dear God, Jamie, at first I didn't believe that Jean was speaking to you, but I do now. He said, you are quoting an obscure biblical passage from the Communion of Saints. Like I would have known. As I said, I never went to church or synagogue, and John and I never discussed religion, at least not when he was in a body. Mm-hmm. Now, it took me a year to understand why Jean chose to quote that and only that biblical passage to me. Now, remember, he was a religious pioneer in life. He continues to be in the afterlife. And what I found out is that the Communion of Saints says that our loved ones in spirit are one with or in communion with God and the saints. Mm-hmm. And since we're supposed to stay in communion and communication with God and the saints, it means the Bible is telling us we're supposed to stay in communion and communication with our loved ones in spirit because they are one with, God. They are in communion with God and the saints. So the point Jean wants us all to know is what we have been told about the afterlife is dead wrong, if you will pardon my pun, right? He said, we must understand that heaven is a state, not a place. Mm-hmm. Heaven is all around us. Death is an illusion. There's a very thin veil between the realm where you are and the realm where I am. All of this means we're not supposed to live in an emotional wasteland separated from those we love, waiting until we, quote unquote, die and enter heaven in order to reconnect with them. Because heaven is now. It's right here. We need to reconnect and stay connected now.
Yeah. Okay. So if we, a quick question. So most people, religious people think heaven's like up in the sky, way far away. But right. When we say the veil is thin and there are other dimensions, it could just be this
close. Literally.
It's around. Right, it's not way up in the stratosphere.
It's not a palace in the sky. These are our earthly misconceptions, right? And Jean said, there's a very thin veil. I'm standing right here. I'm closer than you can ever imagine. Yeah. So we have to revamp how we think about what heaven is and where it is. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, another one that I hear all the time is, well, you can't move on. You reconnect with a loved one in spirit. You're not moving on with your life. Well, guess what? It's quite the opposite. Mm-hmm. The more we reconnect with those in spirit, the more we get on with our lives because it's not natural to be separated from those we love. Time does not heal the pain of losing somebody you love. You're marinating in misery. You're marinating in grief. Is that entering your life fully? No. But when we reconnect with our loved ones, our grief turns to orgasmic joy. That's what it is. And we are so happy we are now fully in the moment and fully entering our lives. Mm-hmm. Now, another one I hear all the time is, well, if you reconnect with a life partner or spouse, well, how are you going to be able to love another person? Right. Well, that's like saying to a mother, right? Well, did you have a first child? Yeah. Did you love the child? Yeah. Well, then you can't have any more. Right. Because you can't love any more than one. Our hearts are made to love. And then our like Jean won't be jealous if you find someone else. No, because they understand that whoever your partner is on the earth plane, it's going to give it to you in a way that the spirit can't. Well, Jamie, I've always wondered this. So let's say you have a life partner like Jean, just true love, and then they pass on, and then you do meet someone else that you also have an amazing connection. So then when you die and everyone's dead, you have like a threesome there? Yeah, because there's none of this possession and jealousy and competitiveness. It doesn't work like that in spirit. Because I hear psychics say, "Oh, your mom and dad are together now, and they're with." Yeah. But then if they had another spouse, it's just something that seems hard to wrap our minds around. The thing is, I believe you connect with. It's very hard for people to understand. It's sort of all. Right. It's like you're connecting with everyone. This kind of goes with the idea of reincarnation, because people will say, "Well, how can you reincarnate and also reconnect?" Well, if you think about reincarnation as like non-local consciousness, or the many facets of a prism. So I can be with one facet of a prism, that is the being in a body, reincarnated, and another facet, here he's with me in spirit, because we're living in multi-dimensions all at the same time.
Right, we're multidimensional, right. Yeah, this is just a sliver in our body right now of our
Yeah,
soul,
it's
right?
just very mind-bending, but think about that. I have a course called Love Never Dies course, and you can find it at loveneverdiescourse.com, and I go into real detail about all this, which I didn't even go as fully in the book as I do in the course, loveneverdiescourse.com. So, and I talk about how people think, oh my goodness, here's another one. You're preventing them from performing their holy work. You're holding them back. People don't understand. What John said to me, I hear again and again from all the spirit beings of my patients and callers on Hance Radio. They'll say, what else is there for me to do? It's my full-time occupation to love you.
I love that.
They are here to hold our hands, support us as we travel down the bumpy road called life, help us fulfill our spiritual destinies, and heal us mind, body, and soul. So that's what their work is. They have nothing else to do but to help us. Wow. Now, another one you'll hear all the time is, oh, well, you're opening the door to the devil. That's a big one. Right. Now, the thing is, the Dalai Lama said that Jean was one of the 50 men of all time who was one with God. And Jean never spoke to me about devils or dark forces. They didn't even exist. I don't even believe the devil exists. There may be spirit presences that are less evolved than others, but that's a far cry from devils and dark forces. The devils, I talk about this in the Love Never Dies course too. Devils are really a manifestation of our own internal darkness. We don't know what to do with it, so we externalize it and say there's a boogeyman out there. I talk more about what that is.
And what about, just a digression, what about the Catholic Church does do exorcisms and things?
Yeah, well, but that's good for business. That's what Joel just told me. That brings in a lot of dough. Right. So, and if there are presences that are confused or disoriented, I say, listen, we all have a built-in internal call blocking.
Right.
Internal call, spiritual call blocking. You don't want to take a call, don't take the call. Set boundaries for yourself. And besides, our loved ones in spirit are our gatekeepers. They're here to watch over us and protect us. If there are any negative presences, they protect you from that too.
Yes.
So those are just a few of the misconceptions. Now, there is one more misconception that I do need to speak to. And you kind of mentioned this a few moments ago where you said, well, once they're in heaven up there, they're out of reach. Because a lot of Catholics will say, okay, look, even if I grant that the afterlife does exist, but once they're in heaven, they're out of reach. Well, I found out that Catholics believe this when I went back to Jean's priest to tell him more about what I had been hearing from Jean. And he said to me, listen, just be prepared. When he's in heaven, you won't hear from him anymore. What? There are no cell towers in heaven? What? The signals from Earth can't reach heaven, or the towers are too weak? It's garbage, all these earthly misconceptions. I come home this day, and I'm bothered. After the priest said this, I'm bothered the whole day. In the evening, I set the group for one of the groups I run in my home office. Everybody's late except a new member named Ashley. Never seen me before, doesn't know I'm a widow, nothing. We shut the group room door, and 2 seconds later I hear ding, ding. That's the sound that my burglar alarm makes when the front door opens. Now we hear pound, pound, pound footsteps. And they stop in the waiting room adjacent to the group room. And I said, gee, I think someone came in at the wrong time, thinking it's an individual hour. Now we hear the footsteps, pound, 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 going back. And we hear ding, ding, the front door opens and closes. Now I said, I got to go see who this is. So I run from my group room, open my door. The 2 steps it takes to go through the waiting room to the front door, I open the front door. I have a really long driveway, so wherever the person would have parked, he would have not had the chance to go from my front door all the way to the parking area without me seeing him. I open the door. There's nobody there. I come back, I say, there was nobody there. And my patient says, it was a spirit.
Right.
That was Jean's answer to the priest's comment, once I'm in heaven, you won't hear from me anymore. Did you hear those footsteps, Jamie?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now, these are just some of the misconceptions. When we eliminate these, we're already priming ourselves for being more open to reconnecting. Now, part two of Love Never Dies, I talk about the science. Because you have to understand, for a lot of people who are right-brained, we need to know the science behind it. So this all boils down to energy, right? I alluded to energy before. As Einstein said, energy cannot be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So when we leave the physical body, we shed the turtle shell of the body, the energy of our soul essence lives on. Now, where does it live on? The latest quantum physicists explain to us that 95% of our world is comprised of dark matter, or dark energy, because it doesn't reflect light, right?
Right.
So what happens is we now think that the loved ones that leave their bodies, they go into the dark matter. That fits with Jean's lay expression of, I'm standing right here. The dark matter is all around us. Okay, so essentially what we're doing here is we're learning how to send and receive energetic signals to and from our loved ones in the dark matter, or heaven, or the afterlife, whatever you want to call it, right? And I want everybody to know, because it's so important to know, we're all born with this innate ability to energetically communicate. And in fact, we do it on a daily basis. We just don't register that we're doing it. Think about when you park at a light and you're in a car and you look over at the driver in the neighboring car. Doesn't the driver always look back
Always,
at you?
always.
Because he senses the energetic frequency of your gaze. How do twins know when the other's in trouble on the opposite end of the universe? Because energetic frequency. How do close couples know what the other is thinking? So essentially now we're getting ready for part 3 of Love Never Dies, where I teach you how to tune to what I call the spirit channel of your brain, so that you can send and receive energetic communications to and from the spirit realm. So do you want to jump into this and start telling everybody how to do it?
Yeah, I'd love to. Give us some things, because for myself, it was, when I went vegan and got energetic attunements and meditated, and there's some things to clear your channel.
All right, so you're right in tune again. See, girl, I mean, we're totally in tune with each other. So this is the first chapter of part 3 of Love Never Dies. I call it Creating a State of Receptivity.
Yes.
Because there are things that we can do to make it easier for spirit to come through to us. One of the first things Jean said to me was, Jamie, the noise of the day drowns me out. Anytime you want to hear me, come to the bed and be still and quiet, and you'll hear me. So what I say to everybody is you've got to develop pockets of peace, where you sit in silence, you turn off the TV, you turn off the music. Now, I'm not saying you have to convert your condo into a convent, but just find these little pockets of peace moments. I also help you to find the peaceful practice that's right for you, whether it's yoga, tai chi, qigong. And I also give you some breathing exercises, because Jean showed me spirit is born on the breath. When you breathe correctly, you're literally bringing spirit right inside you. Okay? Then I also talk about titrating your emotions. That's shrink speak for don't get yourself too emotionally upset. Especially in the early phases of grief, we tend to be very emotionally upset. But the problem is, and it's diabolical, right when we need to reconnect the most, we're so upset that we are blocking our ability to send and receive. Think about atmospheric storms, how they block the sending and receiving of radio and TV signals, right? Or if we think about when we're in a dark tunnel, we go into a tunnel, right, and we get a cell phone call, but we don't know it because we're in the dark tunnel, we're not receiving. Same thing when we're in a dark tunnel of grief. We're getting a call, a signal, a communication. It isn't until we come out of the dark tunnel that we realize. So I show you in this part of Love Never Dies how to be open to your emotions but not let them wash you overboard. And then I show you how to use what we call hypnagogic or twilight states, the state just before you awake, you fall asleep, and just as you're awakening. And then last but not least, I show you how to open up your 5 senses. And obviously fasting, fevers, all these things help too. Cleansing the body, as you said. The cleaner we are, the more our receiver is clean. But the point to remember is, because spirits are pure energy, they are constantly sending energetic communications to all of our senses. So the more our sensory receiver is open, the easier it's going to be for us to perceive the signs that are being sent to us all the time. Now that's the next chapter in part 3 of Love Never Dies, recognizing the signs.
And I'm thinking hot yoga. Maybe that's why
hot yoga would be awesome, because it heats the body, it cleanses the body while you're also doing a spiritual practice. Absolutely. And when you get a fever, unless it's like you're having a total, delirium, try to let your body have the fever, because that cleans you out too. So now we're cleaner. We're more able to tune to the spirit channel. We're more receptive. Now we have to know how to recognize the signs.
Yes.
Many people will say to me, look, I'm not getting any signs. I'm mad at you. I'm pissed off at you. I get calls all over the world. I'm jealous of you. And then everybody who reads this chapter in Love Never Dies invariably says to me, oh my goodness, when they read all the signs, because I've categorized them, they say, oh, this happened to me, and that happened, and this and that. So for most people, just becoming aware of the signs is sufficient to bring about the reconnection. And we have to, again, remember, because spirits can influence the material world in infinite ways, the signs that they send us are infinite. Odd sounds, like the footsteps, right? Animals behaving oddly, like the chipmunk. They'll give us odd physical sensations, drafts, temperature changes, chills, goose flesh. They'll also use symbolic communications, butterflies, rainbows, and they also love to manifest coins that were minted on a year that is significant to the two of you. Yeah. This is, it's called an apport. This is a really good example of this. It was the anniversary week of Jean's bodily departure, and I'm getting signs all the time. He's dropping coins on me that were minted the year he left his body. And I say this to a patient of mine named Kyla, and she says to me, oh, Jamie, I almost forgot. See the cowboy boots I'm wearing? She said they were off my feet in my bedroom the other day when a coin dropped out of thin air, landed in the boot, and I got the message it was for you. I forgot to take it out. Let me give it to you now. And I hear Jean saying at that moment, you'll see it was minted in '06, the year I left my body. She hands it to me. It was minted in '06. Now, here's where Love Never Dies takes spirit communication to an entirely new place. The CEO of Hay House said to me, we've never seen anything like what you do next. Because what I do now is I show you how to bring the signs to life and use them to engage in back and forth communication between you and spirit. They're your earthly props. Okay? So spirits will dialogue with us using the signs, right, in many, many ways. In addition to dreams and mind melding and thought induction, they will use these signs to communicate. So let me give you an example of the difference between a static sign versus using the signs to facilitate a back and forth dialogue, okay? It's the anniversary week of Jean's bodily departure this last year. I go to the chiropractor, and the secretary, Teresa, is in the office, and I'm alone in the office. And I say to her, Jean's dropping a lot of signs on me this week. Suddenly, I smell gardenias. I don't say a word, and she looks at me, and she says, Jamie, do you smell gardenias? I said, Teresa, that is incredible. That's called the scent of sanctity. And Jean is dropping that sign on both of us simultaneously. It's a sign.
Sometimes I smell some sweet flower once in a while.
That's the scent of sanctity. Yeah. But that's a sign. And he just gave us both the sign. Now I go home to my office and I speak to a patient named Regina who desperately needs to reconnect with her sister in spirit. And I tell her the story about the scent of sanctity and the smell of gardenias. With that, I hear Jean saying to me, but Jamie, I wish I could give you roses. Now, she suddenly pops up off the couch and she says to me, Jamie, I smell roses. Now, what Jean did there was he used her as an open vessel to facilitate a back and forth dialogue between him and me. Because he was saying, you heard me right, I want to give you roses.
Yeah, so that was a confirmation.
And she was the facilitator, the open vessel. Now, I want to give another example that kind of pulls out all the bells and whistles. Human open vessel, earthly props, in this case, a computer. It was last year, and I did the Coast to Coast radio show, and it became an overnight bestseller. It sold out on Amazon. Love Never Dies just went through the roof. The next day, I get a call from this dude. I don't know him. He says, I got to talk to you. Your husband is burning up my brain with messages for you. Okay, I get on the phone with him. And the next thing you know, he starts saying things to me in French and Italian. And I know it's Jean because these are things Jean used to say to me in French and Italian. And the guy says to me, after quoting something in Italian, he says, but Jamie, I'm a hillbilly. I don't know no Italian. Like, dude, I believe you. Your accent sucks. So now, a week later, it's Valentine's Day. And he calls me back and he says, I hope you're sitting down because this is going to surprise you. I said, what? He says, I'm sitting in front of my computer this morning. My hands are on my lap. I'm not even touching my computer. Yeah. And he said, the next thing I know, your husband says, send Jamie the photo of the peach-colored rose. Nobody in the world knows. Not only did Jean give me roses every week, but they were peach-colored.
Every week? How romantic.
Every week. And they were peach-colored. So the guy says that Jean took over his computer, opened up the photo of a peach-colored rose, and then under it is the caption, the name of the photo, Peaches and Cream. Well, the night before, the guy said to me, Jean wants you to know your time is now. And I had said to him, Jean always used to tell me, the cream rises to the top. Oh. So that was his way of dialoguing with me with the help of this human open vessel and the earthly props, the computer. So I have another one. If people want to check this out, it still blows my mind. When you go to AskDrLove.com and look under Work with Dr. Turndorf, you'll see Love Never Dies Retreat. On that page, I do live and virtual retreats where I bring my method to life for live and virtual audiences. Mm-hmm. The first retreat, you will see Jean took over the computer. I'm nowhere near it. And he posts a photo of the Eiffel Tower. Oh. And you can see that on the video on that page. I won't say more about it. Yeah. So now you can just go and see it. It's really fun. So now here's the thing. In addition to dialoguing with the help of human and animal open vessels and earthly props, Love Never Dies now shows you how to engage in direct dialogue. Mm-hmm. If you're among the millions of people who have unfinished business with someone in spirit, I show you how to use my dialoguing with the departed technique to have a back and forth conversation until you arrive at healing and peace. So I show you how to use my visualization and my meditation for making contact, and then we talk back and forth in writing or using a tape recorder. And here's the thing I want everybody to know, because it is so uplifting and wonderful. Often we have to wait until somebody leaves his or her body to work it out. Now, most of us think in the Western world, well, the person left his body, too late, you're SOL. Quite the opposite, because when they leave their bodies, they get a life review and they see how they screwed up. And so they now have a perspective on where they went wrong that makes them much more primed for working it out with us. How did I discover this? It was literally the first week after Jean left his body, and I took the car in for repair. They didn't know me because Jean did the car repair thing. And I go in and I say to Debbie, who introduces herself to me, Jean just left his body due to a bee sting. So she looks at me and she says, I'm a widow too. Mm-hmm. With that, her husband starts pounding down my door, and he says, tell her to stop making the same mistakes that I made with our son, because now she's creating the same power struggle. I tell her, and she says, it's true. So what blew my mind was her husband didn't know about the mistakes till he left his body. Yeah. So that's why one of my patients said, I wish my mother would hurry up and die so we can work this out. Because it's no joke, right? Now, there's one more piece, too, that everybody needs to know, and this is so uplifting for all of us. They need our help in order to evolve spiritually. And they need us to confront them on how they messed up with us for their own spiritual growth and development. They want to hear where they went wrong, and they are invested in working it out with us because they can't fully complete their evolution unless they're in peace with us. And I discovered this on my first Good Friday after Jean left his body. He told me, go to Lainey, the bird lady. She had tried to help us save our little canary, Fluffy, unsuccessfully. And I didn't know her personally. I hadn't seen her in years. I go to her bird studio. I walk in the door, and I see a little Gouldian finch right in a cage near the door. And she points it out, and she says, see that bird? It's going to be dead by nightfall, she says. It hasn't eaten in days, and it's too little. If it doesn't get food soon, it's going to be dead. And I see it's all puffed up and slumped over. It's about to keel over. Yeah. So I say, do you want me to help the bird or try? She says, if you want. So I go up to the cage and I push my cheek right against the bar. Now, normally that would freak a bird out, but the bird doesn't freak. And I say, listen, I want you to go down to your seed bowl and I want you to start eating right now. I'm now energetically communicating with the bird, but I'm saying it aloud so Lainey can hear what I'm saying. The bird goes down, starts scarfing up seeds like a little mini vacuum, and gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and finally is chirping and hopping around. Now I become aware that there is a spirit presence around this bird. And it sounds like a mother, but I don't know who's in spirit for Lainey and who isn't. And the mother says, I'm sorry I was such a weakling and I didn't protect you from him. Mm. And Lainey starts to cry and she says, that's my mother. She always called herself a weakling. And she didn't protect me right. Now I look at the bird and the bird is looking sick again. And it's kind of doing this, craning its neck up. And I can feel there's another presence and this presence is making the bird sick. So I say to the bird, don't worry, go back to eating. I'm going to help Lainey with this other presence. And it's clear to me it's her father. Mm-hmm. He says to her, I know you're still scared of me because I sexually molested you when you were young. And I know you've never outgrown it. And I can't be in peace until you confront me and make me face what I did. And you need to confront me for your own growth and development. So we dialogue back and forth, back and forth. And she arrives at peace with him. And the bird survives.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So it's a beautiful thing. Now here's the one last thing. And this to me is the neatest part of all. We all know what our purpose on earth is. It's to perfect our ability to love ourselves and others. This life is our love lab. And we can't really, really love others fully if we don't love ourselves. Now, I am living proof of the challenge. How do you love yourself fully when you were raised by an abusive family? I tell this in part one. I was physically abused, verbally abused. And even though I spent 27 years with Jean, who just surrounded me in love, I still had my parents' mean voices in my head, tearing me down. No matter how successful I was, I'm no good, I'm a piece of garbage. You know, it was ruining me, killing my self-esteem. After Jean leaves his body, I go to my professional group, and I'm weeping, and I'm saying, I've just got to resolve this. It's destroying my life. And everybody's saying the traditional therapy party line, well, let our voices outshout your parents' voices in your head and tell them to shut the F up and blah, 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 blah. None of this ever worked. Never worked for me, never worked for my patients. I go home and I get on my knees and I say to Jean, I'm begging you, please help me, help me. And he appears to me as the embodiment of love. He's surrounded in golden light. He takes my face in his hands. He turns me toward him and the light and he says, Jamie, listen, listen, listen to me. Let my love for you fully enter you. And in that moment, all Jean's love for me suddenly penetrated me and became my own self-love. And I realized I had to wait until he was out of his body, till he was freed from the physical vessel, for his love to be able to enter me unimpeded. And so the point here is, reconnecting with your loved ones in spirit is your fast track to self-love. When you reconnect with your loved ones, you let them heal you, mind, body, emotion, spirit. They now can fill your internal vessel to overflowing with love. Now your heart is so overflowing with love that you can bring to the world. That's love never dies.
Well, I love that, and what is really one of the crucial things here is a lot of people maybe have an argument before their loved one dies, or don't get to say goodbye, or don't get to say I love you, and then carry that guilt. Right. So with this, you can do that. You can clear that. You can.
That's yet another thing. Absolutely true. And in fact, I tell the story in Love Never Dies of a girl who had a fight with her father. She was a teenager, and she went off to school, and she never saw him again. He had a heart attack, and this made her insane. She started living in a fairy tale world where she wouldn't grow up, pretending she was still a kid, pretending he was still alive in a body. She couldn't get married. She couldn't anything, and her fiancé was ready to get rid of her because she was not fully in the relationship with her fiancé because she was afraid to connect with him and have him die. And so I said to her, look, we need to reconnect with your dad. When you feel he's present, then you're not going to be so afraid to grow up, because she kept thinking, if I grow up, get married, and have kids, then my husband will die. You know, so she was staying a child. So we reconnected. She had this incredible journey with her father in spirit, and that was it. She said, I feel him. I know he's here. I don't have to be afraid of my husband marrying me and growing up and him leaving his body. If he does, we'll be together like I am with my father. She got married, had kids.
And I love how you say, he left his body instead of
I
he
don't say
died.
die anymore. I'm working very hard to have the whole world know we don't die. Our relationships don't end in death. Therefore, I don't want to use the word die. I want to say just leave his body.
Yes.
And then when, people will say, oh, this is the day that he died, I say, well, that's his anniversary.
Oh.
That's the day he was birthed into his
Yes.
spirit
Yeah,
body.
exactly. And you spoke about animals too. Often my dog we'll be sitting together, and all of a sudden she'll just look over like she sees someone. And one time we were on the bed and she went like this.
Oh, yes, because they do sense these frequencies. Animals are so much more
And looked up.
sensitive.
Do you think they're really seeing someone there, or
I
a
do.
spirit?
It's interesting because now I certify coaches, right, in my transdimensional grief method. And every week we meet over, it was first WebEx, now we're using Zoom. Every week, the spirit presences are being captured. We see auras, we see specters, the lights are flashing, and now we're hearing voices. They say they hear Jean's voice speaking after mine. So apparently coming together in this group, everyone being so open with the same intention, spirits are just having a party with us.
There are times when I interview people, and then I look at the video back, and an orb will fly by.
Well, yes, and I'm told that when I give talks, they tell me that they see Jean's specter always around me and near me. So we'll see what you see.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Gosh. Well, thank you so much for telling your story, and all your links are below. And you guys leave comments and let us know if you've had any experience connecting with your loved ones. And we'll see what happens. And thank you. Yeah, it looks like all of a sudden you're glowing. There's this glowing light. What is that? Your lamp?
That's Jean. Oh my God, there's no light there.
I mean, it's just suddenly.
See, didn't I said to you, he always gives manifestations, and usually he'll mess with the audio. There's no light there.
Oh my gosh, Jamie, can you see it?
I see it.
You guys, I hope you can see this. I'm sure it's coming.
I see it. Oh my goodness, I see it. This is why I keep putting out these manifestation videos on my YouTube channel, because there it is.
I have like chills. I'm like tearing up.
My God. And I thought, what are you going to do today, Jean? And then he always surprises us with something new.
Jean, can you make it go higher? It's going higher. Look, it's just like you're all glow. You're in, and underneath your face, it's all glowing. It's like, wow, Jean. We love you. Thank you for coming to. Thank you. Oh my God, it's just like woo! I'm so happy, Jean, that you've come and spent some time with us here today and showed your light on the video. This is
when
so.
When you go to YouTube, you'll see there's so many videos of him with light, turning lights on and off. I'm gonna. If you'll give me permission, I'll put this on my channel.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I just like, I don't want to hang up because I'm like looking at this is like amazing.
And it'll show up. Everybody. Oh, my coaches are just freaked out because we see Jean coming as big, bright. You see, also this is an unearthly light. It's not like any kind of light that we have on the earth plane from lamps, or it's not anything.
Oh my God, I'm seeing orbs and stuff now.
Wow.
Behind you.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yes.
Let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others.
Well, this morning, before I got out of bed, I did some prayer and energetic work, and I said hello to Jean and said, if you want to give any messages or anything, because I know he comes through people that you meet and stuff. So I just kind of
there you go.
Thought to.
Well, it was real. Oh, now you hear my voice is doing some funny stuff too. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my gosh, it's just getting higher and higher. Well, okay, I can just sit here.
Nice seeing you, and we'll talk again.
Bye, everybody. Mwah. Bye, Jean. Bye, Jamie.